This is IGN. Less a miraculous resurrection and more like exhuming a shambling corpse. This is your IGN review of Double Dragon Revive by Jarrett Green. Hot on the heels of Ninja Gaiden's own 2D revival with the excellent Ragebound, Double Dragon Revive comes off more like a tribute band for the series rather than a proper reunion tour. It doesn't play the hits how you remember it, instead putting its own spin on things, from how it looks to how it sounds to how it plays. All of those aspects not only failed to live up to my admittedly mild expectations for a new Double Dragon, but after hours of its out-of-tune meandering, started to cement the idea that maybe we should put a little more distance between attempts to revitalize this series. Even though I've been playing these games for most of my life, it's sort of jarring how straightforward Double Dragon Revive is. Side-scrollers of this arcadey belt-scroll variety have found a lot of ways to spice up the punch-your-way-to-the-right recipe, and Revive seems interested in keeping as much of that new seasoning away from its plate as possible. It's a basic protein packed with 8 non-branching levels, accompanied by starchy combat that's filling but has barely any sauce. Picking up any of the 4 playable characters is simple and intuitive, with normal attack strings that can be mashed out on one button, alongside special attacks and hyper blows that can be used to punctuate these combos, or in some instances, extend your offense into wall-bouncing juggles. All of these actions are unique to each fighter. Well, Billy and Jimmy Lee have distinctions that don't translate into mechanical differences, but former damsel-turned-head kicker Marion and ninja frenemy Ranzo have attacks that are a little more flashy and utilitarian. I rarely felt it necessary to use more than basic combo loops on normal difficulty, though. As long as an enemy didn't have an annoying shield or hyper armor protecting them as they wound up a big attack, something ubiquitous in the later levels, they were reliably vulnerable to a good old-fashioned fist to the face. Enemy variety is at least diverse and effective at making you use the small menu of options you have. As levels progress, old bad guys show up to mingle with the newer ones to form a sort of street thug gumbo that can get a little spicy towards the end of your run. It's largely a numbers game, with you often getting overwhelmed by the sheer amount of incoming blows from all angles. I like the little brain puzzle of having to identify the most dangerous threat to take out first, or needing to figure out the most efficient way to wrangle as many folks as possible into a big attack, but it wasn't beguiling enough for me to forget that the process of breaking these dudes down was still rather dull. Even the array of limited-use weapons, those strong tools usually worth the effort to grab if things get hairy, are your standard fare knives, 2x4s, sledgehammers, etc. Bosses break the monotony up a little bit, introducing slightly more engaging stage hazards and pattern mechanics, like Linda, who you need to shake off the pillar she's hiding on top of before you can attack her directly. These get pretty brutal towards the end, though, specifically the Chapter 7 boss, which has to be the most aggravating fight I've maybe ever played in one of these games. Truly a test of endurance against a ceaseless onslaught of the most cheating cheaters Revive has to offer. There's not a lot of flash visually either. Most characters' models look good, but the fire, wind, and dragon effects that come from their limbs when channeling their chi looks a step behind in quality. Camera work and sound design come together adequately to make big hits feel good and all that jazz. The soundtrack is decent, with a handful of original riffy rockouts and remixes of old series jams that sound good in the moment, but sort of leave your head immediately after they end. Overall, Double Dragon Revive lacks the visual identity that the 16-bit Double Dragon Gaiden and even pastel punk Double Dragon Neon have, let alone its peers like Shinobi Art of Vengeance and Ninja Gaiden Ragebound from this year. Double Dragon Revive feels less like a return to glory than its title might suggest, and more like a police sketch of someone trying to describe what the series they loved looked like from memory. There's the important details you'd need to identify it by: simple combat with big super attacks, peacocking bad guys of all shapes and sizes, the subway, casino, and elevator stages required by law to be in games like this, but none of it feels distinct or special, and the parts in which it's passable get held back by wonky, unresponsive controls and maddening difficulty spikes. Revival suggests reinvigoration, but this feels more like exhuming a shambling corpse. Double Dragon Revive's IGN score? 5 out of 10. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Tony Jackson, and for the latest Double Dragon Revive updates, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.